She carried a secret so heavy that even the wind seemed to whisper doubts in her ear. Married in silence, bound by love yet trapped by fear, she could not reveal the truth. But how long can a secret this big remain hidden? And what will happen when the truth finally comes to light? The quiet rustling of leaves echoed through the still night as she sat by the dim glow of the lantern, her hands trembling over a letter she dared not send. Every word on the page carried the weight of her heart, yet the ink felt powerless against the burden of her secret. She had never imagined love would find her this way, wrapped in secrecy, hidden behind closed doors, and spoken only in hushed whispers. Her name was Amina, and she was married. But no one could know. It had not been an impulsive decision, nor was it one she regretted. Love had come to her in the form of Idris, a man of unwavering character and deep faith. He had seen her not as a mere daughter of a well-known merchant, but as a woman of worth, someone to be cherished beyond material wealth. When he asked for her hand, she had no doubt in her heart that he was the one destined for her. Yet, fate had played a cruel trick on them. Amina's father, a man of high status, had already planned her future, one that did not include Idris. He sought a marriage alliance that would elevate their family's name, one that would secure influence and wealth. Idris, though honorable and hard-working, did not fit the expectations her father had set. Knowing the battle they faced, Amina and Idris made a decision that defied all odds. They wed in secret. Under the watchful eyes of only a few trusted witnesses, they made their vows, promising to remain faithful until the time came when they could live as husband and wife openly. But time was not kind to them. Each day, Amina woke with the fear that someone would uncover the truth. She moved through life with careful steps, avoiding questions she could not answer and deflecting suspicions with forced smiles. At home, her father continued his search for what he deemed a suitable husband for her, while her mother, though loving, remained bound by tradition and expectation. Her heart ached with the longing to call Idris her husband without fear. In stolen moments, they met beneath the cover of darkness, speaking in whispers and holding on to the hope that their love would one day be recognized. But hope alone could not erase the burden she carried. Every conversation with her father felt like walking on the edge of a blade. He would often speak of potential suitors, each more prestigious than the last, his tone filled with pride at the alliances he was considering. Amina would nod, feigning interest, all while her mind screamed at the injustice of it all. One evening, as she sat with her mother, the weight of her secret pressed down heavier than ever. "You seem distant, my child," her mother observed, her eyes searching Amina's face for answers. "Is something troubling you?" Amina hesitated. How could she answer? How could she reveal the truth when she knew it would shatter everything? "I am only tired, mother," she said softly, forcing a small smile. Her mother reached out, gently stroking her hand. "Your father means well, you know. He only wants what is best for you." Amina lowered her gaze. If only she could make them understand that what was best for her was not wealth, nor power, but love, the kind of love she had already found. But the world she lived in did not value love over duty. Days passed, and the tension within her home grew thicker. Amina knew that her father was close to finalizing an engagement for her, and the thought sent a chill down her spine. She could not marry another man. Her heart, her soul, her very existence belonged to Idris. One night, as she met Idris in the shadows of the old courtyard, she could see the concern in his eyes. "They are planning to marry you off," he said, his voice firm but laced with pain. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "We cannot go on like this," he continued. "We have held on to this secret for as long as we could. But if they force you into a marriage, our silence will no longer protect us." Tears welled in her eyes. She had known this moment would come, but she was not ready. The fear of losing everything, her family, her home, her place in society, paralyzed her. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. Idris took her hands in his grip steady and reassuring. "We must decide, Amina. Either we continue to hide and risk losing each other forever, or we tell the truth and face whatever comes." She wanted to be brave. She wanted to say that love would conquer all, that the world would understand. But reality was far harsher than the dreams she had clung to. As she returned home that night, her heart pounded with the weight of uncertainty. She could no longer deny that the time for hiding was running out. The love she held so dear was at risk, and the only way forward was through the storm of truth that awaited her. Would she be ready to face it? Or would the fear of losing everything force her into a silence she could never escape? The walls of her home felt tighter with each passing day. Amina had always known secrecy would be difficult, but she had not anticipated how heavy it would become. Each morning, she rose with the sun, her heart weighed down by the reality she had to conceal. Her father's expectations loomed over her like a dark cloud, while her mother's hopeful glances, filled with dreams of an advantageous match, made it even harder to breathe. Yet, despite the overwhelming pressure, she remained silent. She carried her love for Idris in the quiet moments of the day, in the whispered prayers before dawn, and in the stolen glances they exchanged in the market when no one was looking. Though they were bound by vows, her world refused to acknowledge their union. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, dreading what the next day would bring. Every conversation with her father sent chills through her spine, fearing the moment he would announce a betrothal she could not accept. Her mother's gentle words about duty and honor felt like daggers to her soul. If only they knew that she had already chosen her fate, that she had already given her heart to a man worthy of it. One evening, the weight of it all became unbearable. As she sat at the dinner table, listening to her father speak of a suitor, a wealthy nobleman from a respected lineage, her hands trembled beneath the table. She clenched them into fists, willing herself to remain composed. "He is an honorable man," her father said, his tone firm. "His family is powerful, and his wealth will ensure that you never know hardship." Amina swallowed the lump in her throat. Wealth and power, was that all that mattered? Did her happiness hold no value? Her mother, noticing her silence, placed a gentle hand over hers. "My dear, this is a great opportunity. You will have everything you need. Everything except freedom. Everything except love." She forced a nod, not trusting her voice to speak. How could she tell them that she already had a husband, that she had made vows they knew nothing about? Her secret had become a cage, and with each passing day, the walls were closing in. The burden of her silence stretched beyond her home. In the market, in the streets, in every gathering, she felt the weight of the lie pressing against her chest. Friends and family spoke of her future, of the great match she was destined to make, unaware that her future had already been written in a hidden ceremony beneath the stars. One afternoon, as she walked through the village square, she caught sight of Idris. He was speaking with an elder, his posture steady, his expression unreadable. She longed to run to him, to seek the comfort of his presence, but she could not. To the world, he was nothing more than a familiar face, another man among many. The pain of their separation was growing unbearable. That evening, under the cloak of darkness, they met once more. Amina's heart ached as she looked into Idris's eyes, seeing the same torment reflected in them. "This cannot go on," he said, his voice low but firm. "Your father is making plans. You cannot allow this to continue in silence." She lowered her gaze, knowing he was right. But fear had rooted itself deep within her soul. What if speaking the truth meant losing everything? "I don't know how," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Idris reached for her hands, his warmth grounding her. "Then we will find a way together. But we cannot wait until it is too late." Tears pricked her eyes. She had never wanted to keep their love hidden, but she had also never wanted to betray her family. Now, she stood at a crossroads, forced to choose between duty and the life she truly desired. As she returned home that night, her father's voice greeted her before she had even stepped inside. "Amina, come here," he called from the sitting room. Her heart pounded as she entered, her eyes falling on the two men standing beside him. She recognized one, the nobleman her father had spoken of before. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. "It is decided," her father announced with pride. "You will be engaged by the end of the month." Amina's breath caught in her throat. No. This was happening too fast. The world was closing in around her, the weight of her silence now suffocating. As she looked into her father's expectant gaze, she knew the time had come. She could no longer carry this burden alone. But was she ready to face the consequences of revealing the truth? The room fell silent after her father's announcement, yet the words echoed in Amina's mind like thunder. "You will be engaged by the end of the month." Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to protest, to tell them she could not marry this man, but fear held her tongue captive. She cast a glance at her mother, hoping to find a trace of hesitation, But her mother only smiled, believing this was for the best. The nobleman, standing tall beside her father, regarded her with quiet confidence. He seemed pleased, certain that this arrangement would go as planned. He did not know the truth. No one did. Amina nodded stiffly, forcing herself to appear composed, but inside, she was unraveling. How much longer could she live this lie? That night, she paced the length of her room, her thoughts a storm of panic and regret. If she spoke now, would her father disown her? Would her mother turn away? And what of Idris? Would he suffer for loving her? She had held on to secrecy to protect everyone, but now, that same silence was leading her straight into disaster. The days that followed were a nightmare. Everywhere she went, people whispered about her upcoming engagement. Friends congratulated her, relatives spoke about the grand wedding preparations to come, and her mother fussed over fabrics and jewelry as if Amina weren't dying inside. But the more she tried to keep the truth buried, the more it seemed to fight its way to the surface. One evening, as she walked through the market, she overheard two women speaking in hushed tones. "Have you noticed how restless she seems?" one of them murmured. "There's something odd about this engagement." "She hardly looks happy," the other agreed. "Perhaps she loves another." Amina's heart lurched. She hurried past them, her veil pulled low to hide her expression. Had others begun to suspect? Even at home, the tension was growing. Her mother, usually so patient, started asking pointed questions. "Why do you seem so distracted, my dear?" she asked one afternoon, folding a silk shawl meant for Amina's wedding. "You should be overjoyed. This match is perfect for you." Amina bit her lip. She could not meet her mother's gaze. "I am just overwhelmed," she whispered. Her mother sighed, setting the fabric aside. "Amina, if there is something troubling you, you must tell me." For a brief moment, Amina considered confessing everything. She wanted to tell her mother about Idris, about their vows, about the sleepless nights filled with fear. But she hesitated. Would her mother understand? Or would she see it as a betrayal of family honor? Before she could gather the courage to speak, a loud knock sounded at the door. A servant entered, bowing respectfully. "Master has requested your presence in the sitting room, my lady." Amina exchanged a glance with her mother before rising to follow. When she entered the room, her father was seated beside the nobleman, her supposed future husband. Across from them stood Idris. Her breath caught in her throat. What was he doing here? Her father's eyes were dark with suspicion. "Amina, do you know this man?" Her hands clenched at her sides. She could feel the weight of every gaze in the room pressing against her. Idris stood firm, his face unreadable, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. She hesitated, her heart pounding so hard it felt as if it might burst from her chest. The nobleman observed the exchange with narrowed eyes. "It is unusual," he said smoothly, "for a man to visit a household unless he has business here." Amina swallowed hard. She could not lie, not about Idris. Not any more. Her father exhaled sharply, his patience clearly thinning. "Amina, answer me." She opened her mouth, but the words would not come. How could she explain the love she had hidden for so long? How could she justify what they had done? And then Idris spoke. "With all due respect, sir," he said steadily, "I am here because I cannot stay silent any longer." Amina's father stiffened. "And what exactly do you mean by that?" Idris turned to Amina, his eyes filled with determination. "It is time we tell them the truth." The silence in the room was deafening. Amina's fingers trembled. She had been running from this moment for too long, weaving a web of secrecy that had only made things worse. She drew a slow breath, forcing herself to meet her father's gaze. "Father," she began, her voice trembling but resolute, "I am already married." The room exploded into chaos. The silence that followed Amina's confession was fleeting, shattered almost instantly by the sharp gasp of her mother and the furious rise of her father. The nobleman stiffened, his eyes narrowing as realization set in. But it was her father's voice, laced with disbelief and rage, that cut through the air like a blade. "What did you just say?" he demanded, his voice dangerously low. Amina's hands trembled at her sides, but she did not lower her gaze. This moment had been inevitable. No more hiding. No more silence. "I am already married," she repeated, her voice steadier than she expected. To Idris. Her mother clutched her chest, sinking onto the nearest seat, shaking her head as if trying to wake from a nightmare. No, my child. This cannot be. The nobleman's expression darkened, his lips curling in disdain. I see I have wasted my time here, he muttered, stepping back. He turned to her father. This is an insult to my name. A disgrace. Her father, however, barely acknowledged him. His gaze remained locked on Amina, his face red with fury. You went behind my back, he seethed. You disobeyed me. Do you have any idea what you have done? Amina swallowed hard, her fingers twisting in the fabric of her dress. I did not do this to defy you, father. I did it because I love him. The words, so simple yet so heavy, hung in the air. Love, her father spat. You speak of love as if it matters more than duty, more than honor. Do you think love will put food on your table? Do you think it will earn respect in this world? Idris stepped forward, his expression calm but firm. With all due respect, sir, I have never sought to dishonor you. My intentions toward Amina have always been honorable. I married her because I love her and because I am capable of providing for her. Her father turned on him with venom in his eyes. Providing for her? You are nothing more than a common man. You cannot give her the life she deserves. Amina's mother, still stunned, finally found her voice. Why did you not tell us? She whispered, her tone wounded rather than angry. Why keep such a secret from your own family? Amina turned to her mother, her heart aching at the pain she saw there. Because I was afraid, she admitted. I knew father would never approve. I knew that to him, Idris was not enough. But he is enough for me. He has always been enough for me. Her father let out a bitter laugh. And now what? You expect me to welcome this betrayal with open arms? Amina's chest tightened. I expect nothing, father. I only wish for you to understand that I could not marry someone else when my heart already belongs to him. The nobleman scoffed. This is a scandal. A woman who deceives her own father to marry in secret? It speaks of poor upbringing. Consider our engagement broken. Good, Amina said without hesitation. Her father's head snapped toward her, disbelief flickering across his face. He had expected her to plead, to regret, to crumble beneath his fury. Instead, she stood firm. The nobleman stormed out without another word, and the room fell into thick silence once more. Her father exhaled sharply, his hands clenched at his sides. You have shamed this family, he said finally, his voice laced with a finality that sent chills down her spine. Do not expect to be welcomed here any longer. Amina's breath caught. Father, you have made your choice, he interrupted coldly. Now live with it. Her mother gasped. Husband, no. But he silenced her with a glare. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Amina's mother reached for her, her eyes welling with tears. My child, what have you done? Amina felt her own tears brimming, but she held her head high. I followed my heart, mother. I followed what I knew was right. Her mother shook her head, torn between love and sorrow. May Allah guide you, my daughter, she whispered before turning away. Amina felt Idris's hand slip into hers, grounding her, reminding her that she was not alone. The weight of her father's rejection, the pain in her mother's eyes, the whispers that would surely spread throughout the town, all of it hurt. But for the first time in months, she felt free. She turned to Idris, taking a deep breath. No more secrets, she said softly. He nodded. No more secrets. Hand in hand, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next, together.